Hey, what are you feeling right now? Really, pausing, checking in with your body. Are you feeling any contractions? Are you feeling any tensions? Especially when you're thinking about interacting with certain people or having to go into different spaces or environments. That's really feeling into your body, the soma, right? The somatics. And my next guest is Brett Hill, and he's a mindful coach, and he talks exactly about that. How to be more mindful about your body when you're connecting with other people, when you're in certain work environments or any social interactions. Really checking in with yourself so that way your relationships can be more transformative than transactional. So check that episode out, and I'll see you there. Welcome, new and true friends, as we continue the series from transactional relationships to transformational ones. And as I said before in that risky business series, the relationship really starts within ourselves as we
Mm.
allow ourselves, to be seen and invite a little bit more transparency and vulnerability with our relationships, which involves being self aware, right, of those thoughts and sensations that you might be experiencing. This is where we start to create the transformational relationships really within ourselves, as you are the ripple effect. I've said that many times. So today, of course, I've invited a special guest, Brett Hill. He's the founder of Mindful Coach Association and the host of the Mindful Coach podcast. And what drew me to learn more about Brett is his Mindful Coach method, because it incorporates coaching, right? Presence, centered mindfulness, and the somatic techniques, which are based on somatic psychology, otherwise known as Hakomi. And Brett attributes his professional success to the transformative power of mindfulness, which he really believes is the most important skill for personal and global transformation. And that's what I'm all about, right? As we're here working from the inside out, we're literally shifting and co creating. And so I'm very excited to have Brett here with us today. So, welcome, Brett.
I thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I found you on LinkedIn, and I'm very selective of who I connect with because I
Mm.
want this to be very intentional, such as my business name, living with
Makes
intention.
sense.
Yeah, to co create, to get in touch with people who want to expand the collective consciousness. And I found it very fascinating how you're using your coaching method with mindfulness and somatic
Mhm.
experiences. It's very fascinating to me. So, can you describe what that looks like?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the invitation and for reaching out. And I appreciate you. I appreciate your curating your experience for your audience, and I feel honored to be invited. So, and yes, I do believe that mindfulness and the practice of simply paying attention to our experience in a way where we don't step into the experience, but you just notice it and go, oh, there's that part of me. And oh, there I am. There's that voice in my head that makes me want to be small or makes me pull back or is saying I'm not enough. Whatever those things are that are happening inside of us, just to be present with them and rather than say, oh, that's who I am, just noticing that's just a part of me that's going on. And
Mm,
just that mindset itself helps expand your sense of identity, right? That I'm bigger than any one thing that's happening, any one thought, any one emotion, any one feeling. I'm bigger than that. I am, and And I understand just from your work, about connecting to the bigger, connecting to the source, connecting to what's really foundational for you. And that practice is about looking inside and being present with. And I take another step called naming it in. Now, to answer your question in kind of a long-winded way, what that looks like in coaching is that you go beyond storytelling and advising. So instead of saying, well, why don't you try this and why don't you try this and oh, so your agenda for the session is that you want to be more productive during your week, which is fabulous. Those are good things to do, and I'm not against that kind of coaching at all. And there's certainly a great place for that, and people can be really good and really benefit from that kind of work. But what we'll do is we'll look at what does the client present in the moment, and we work with what shows up rather than an idea of where they want to go. They start with that. Oh, I'm not being more productive. Well, how does that feel in your body? Oh, I just feel like, I'm agitated all the time. How do you notice that agitation? Well, every time I start to feel like I need to get more done, I notice that my shoulders contract. Oh, well, how, what's that saying? What are your shoulders saying to you is a phrase that you might use in somatic coaching. What are your shoulders saying? They're saying, you're not enough. You're not enough. You have to achieve. You have to meet up. Oh, wow. What's that like? Is that a great experience? No, I'm back. Here's another common phrase. Is that sensation familiar to you? And now suddenly, and often they'll go, yeah, I've had that. It's really not about this job. I have that everywhere I go. And now we're working at a level beyond the immediate week. We're working at the level of the client's relationship to the idea of achievement rather than the specific tasks that you need to achieve. Does that make sense?
Mm. Oh, yeah, that's very powerful because then it sounds like when you're talking to somebody and helping them unpack that sensation, then they're able to see it for what it is instead of still on the hamster wheel, carrying all this with them and then wondering why things aren't working out the way they want them
Or
to.
why
Or,
the
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, or why they aren't working out. I'm sorry, I get excited and I interrupt. Sometimes I don't mean to, so pardon me for that. um, um, or why they're driving themselves to burnout. I wanted to mention that because that's the kind of thing. And the key is that you're getting them to attend to what it feels like in their body so that they can make a different decision rather than continue to drive into a set of behaviors that's going to burn them out and if ultimately not be very satisfying for them. Um,
Oh, I
that's so
100%
we're
agree with that. Yes.
Yay.
Yes. And because I believe, we're so in our minds about
Mhm.
the doing and have to achieve something. That's the mind, and we need our minds, we need the ego, but it doesn't need to drive the bus, right? All the time. And by stepping back and witnessing how our body's responding and communicating, our body's really communicating to us because it only can hold so much.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly so. And we don't normally pay attention to what it's communicating. And it's often communicating really important information. And you can use that information to make better decisions that wind up helping you connect with people more effectively and more intimately and openly, help you make better career choices, help you, and in a very practical way, help you know what to say in the moment that's going to be result in a more effective conversation and connection than would otherwise be possible.
Mm, yes. Because then if we're not aware, then we're on the reactionary mode. And I believe from my own experiences, I can only speak from my experiences, that when I'm not mindful, then I'm just saying these same statements to myself, first and foremost.
Hmm.
And then that ripples out to the other relationships. So that's where I find it's more transactional, right? It's like, okay, what do I got to do to get this?
Hmm.
And instead of
Exactly.
really being relational with yourself, with the other person, uh, because when we're in that space and we're embodied and witnessing this happening, building that emotional intelligence, I think it really then the other person can really sense that, don't they?
Yes, they do. And that's why I teach this kind of skill for coaches and helping professionals, because the fact that other people do really sense that you're paying attention. Well, let me just ask you and others, have you ever been in a situation where you felt like someone was really, really noticing you and really getting you in a way that was uncommon? Have you ever had a conversation like that?
Mm, yes, I have.
And so what if you recall that, what was the impact on you? What happened to you as the recipient in that conversation?
For me, when I become aware of that, it's like, oh, I don't have to prove my worth to this person. I can
Mm-hmm.
relax and I can open and allow a more of an organic conversation to unfold. You know,
Yeah.
be more like sharing both ways. Yes, and it's
Yes,
nice when
exactly.
people ask the questions and it's just how they're asking, are they, like you said, Brett, are they really engaging? Are they really focused on you and asking questions with curiosity of
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
And so that's what we teach in the method, is that exact thing. How to ask those questions, how to demonstrate, first of all, how to create a state of presence for the coach or the therapist or the, facilitator, whatever role you're in, where you're able to be mindful and present in a really refined way and with both yourself and the other person. So it's this a dual, what I call dual awareness, and that's from the Hakomi method, this dual awareness, and then paying attention to that in a super refined way, and then having the skills to know what to say to the client in such a way that it's clear to them that you are paying attention and that you're noticing what's going on with them beyond the words,
Mm,
beyond their words. Like you're paying attention to the personhood of the person, to the struggle, to the life forest, to the challenge, to their generational, where they are in generations of time, to their place on the planet, to their race, to their apparent sexuality, to their all kinds of things, their educational, their capacity. All those things are inputs into you
mhm.
that you use as a way to connect authentically to who is this person and how can I help?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
releasing when a person is working with a client in whatever form that looks like, or even just interacting with people, putting our own needs and wants aside and really being present and communicating, authentically. That's when they see you as an authentic person. This is when, as I said from
Sure.
my experience, they can release their guard. They don't feel like they have to guard against
Yeah,
whatever that is, and learn to, they trust, right? Trusting.
exactly. So trust and rapport are the conditions that are necessary for the deeper work to be be possible. And so the very first part of this entire cycle is to, and I say a cycle, I mean like, a client comes in and you start to talk and you start to build, hopefully, this trust and rapport. The whole first part of the cycle is that. If you have to create the container, the coaching container, and that container involves you as the professional owning, creating the conditions necessary for the deeper work when I say deeper work that wants to, that is possible to be done. Doesn't make it happen. It just makes it possible.
Mm.
Because you can't force someone to go into their depth. You can only create the conditions that make it possible if they wish to, and then support them in that journey.
Oh, most definitely. Yes, it's like, the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. It's just
Yeah,
us
exactly.
being
So
open ourselves and curious, that creates that little safety sanctuary within the conversation. And then they see you as a person and vice versa.
exactly, and the one of the key points in the work that I do is that there are specific things that you can do to make that possible. So there is a lot of validity to the notion if I just show up and I'm mindful and present in a more advanced way, just be in a state of loving presence, that when you engage with someone, that healing automatically help. That's one of the things that Ron Kurtz said later in his career. Ron Kurtz was the founder, creator of the method, Hakomi method, which I studied. And one of the things he said later on in his career is that when you just bring yourself into a state of loving presence and you engage with somebody, that automatically causes healing to happen. And I thought that was a profound insight and
Mm,
a beautiful one. And it's true that does create a lot of opportunity, and certainly is a powerful way to go about working with people and yourself, and engaging in the world. And he said that as a man who is exceptionally skilled with these somatic techniques as well. So it could be said that one of the reasons he was able to relax into this state is because he had the skills down. So he could kind of ninja the process from a very open um, state of grace, if you will, rather than trying to figure, well, what do I do now? I'm not sure if I should be doing this or I should be doing that. The kinds of thoughts that go through coaches and helpers whenever we're a little uncertain. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we're talking about two different states of learning here. Hopefully that makes
mm.
sense.
And so, yeah, it so does, Brett. And then the question comes to mind as you're explaining this, then how do people start? What do you suggest for them to start? As you said in the very beginning, noticing the shoulders, noticing how your body's responding. But do you have like some steps for people to take that you
Yeah,
offer your clients that
yeah,
maybe you could share?
absolutely. The very first thing is to you have to do remember we started talking about the state that the coach comes into is one of the most important things. So the very first part of the work is to get yourself into a place where you can do the work. So it's kind of like, sometimes I talk about it like a surgeon who's walking into a complicated surgery. You want them to be in a space of grace, equanimity, calm, centered, confidence, right? So you want to be in that kind of a place where now, if you don't have the tools and techniques to bring yourself on purpose intentionally into that place, and that's the first task. So we spend a couple of weeks in the method, this actually legitimately should be like 3 or 4 months, but I try to compress it down and give people the tools rather than take them through um, the full process, because it would take a long time to actually inhabit these skills. But a lot of people come to this with some experience in these methods already. So, for example, one of the things I give people in right away is to study transitional moments in your life. And by that, I mean everyday transitions. You walk outside from inside. That's a big somatic experience that people often just blow through because they're on the way to the car and they're thinking, I've got to go to the store to get the thing. I'm going to get in the car. Now you just walked out of out of a house with a ceiling and walls into a giant open space with fresh air and nothing between you and outer space but gas. And Then you get into a tiny little vehicle with this a mechanical frame that's got 2 inches above your head, and suddenly you're in this compressed. You just went through these big physical changes
Mm.
and probably didn't even notice. And I'm saying that's me too, right? But I have a practice of stepping outside and noticing what does it feel like now that I'm outside.
Mm-hmm.
Simply paying attention, noticing what does it feel like when I close that car door. Go, boom. Wow, I'm in a car. It feels really different in here, you know? Now, why is that important? It's important because whenever you're sitting in front of a client and the client is saying, well, the thing is, I felt like I really wasn't sure about that. And you can see that they went through a transition right then and there. And that's what in neurology we call a somatic state shift. They were talking and suddenly they just went, there's a big sigh, a big
Mm.
nonverbal presentation. And you're going to notice what did that feel like for the client, because you learn to pay attention for what it feels like in you when you go through transitions. And you're noticing the client now is going through a transition. Now, they don't have the skill that you have because you've been practicing noticing these transitions. They don't have that yet. And so you're going to help them. What happened right there? You asked them
Mm.
what. So I appreciate what you're saying, but let's just stop for a minute. I want to ask you what happened. There was a big sigh, and there seemed to be some meaning in that. What was that about? Yeah, I just, it just feels almost a little hopeless there. And so now you're working with an emotion rather than a story. And there's also a whole other thing about, you don't want to steer necessarily into the depths of that emotion because this is coaching and not psychotherapy. And there's a story around that, that basically, as a coach, I can choose to facilitate towards the feeling of disconnection or disempowerment, which might be underneath that. Or if you get under that, the reason they're feeling that is because they want to be empowered. They
Mm.
want to be powerful. They want to manifest. They want to feel alive. And so, if you can connect to that motive force and facilitate towards that, now we're doing key work, which is to facilitate towards resourcefulness. And so, even though the client's going, "Oh, I'm feeling down and I don't know what to do," say, "Oh, so you." Sometimes I'll say, "Wow, you have a lot of clarity around that." So suddenly, I'm facilitating towards their clarity about their problem rather than the problem, right? So, yeah, it's really clear that this is, oh, wow, so you really know that this is really the key thing. So you see how you can make a choice there that lands them in a part of them that's a resource, which is, I know what my problem is, rather than I feel crappy about this thing.
Oh, yes, because then that, right, the body's responding, the body holds everything, and then the mind will validate that emotion, and then the crappy feeling will continue for the rest of the day and then into the next client, or you take it home with
Yeah,
you. So
unless
I
you
I
know how,
really
yeah,
love
unless
that.
you, yeah, if you're a therapist, you can go into that feeling and help people transform it. But I try to advise coaches that that's not the job for coaches. For coaches, it's about resourcefulness, resilience, empowerment, engagement, finding aliveness, and facilitating towards that as much as you can. Now, if the client can't get there because they're so stuck, which is absolutely true in some cases, they can't connect to any of that, they're not a good candidate for coaching. They need to be seeing a therapist. They need to be
Mm,
working the emotional wounding and go into
yes.
those original wounded parts and heal those. And then the aliveness will spontaneously come forward. And in coaching,
Oh,
the agenda for the mindful coach method, and this is something I learned from John Eisman, who created recreation of the self method um, in Portland. I studied with him for quite a long time, and fabulous method. It was teaching about how to facilitate towards resilience, resourcefulness. So another example of the way I would do this with clients and coaches as well is I give them an assignment. to make a list of what lights you up. What are the things that you connect to that automatically just make you go, wow, that is so amazing.
Mhm.
And we all have stuff like that. What would that be for you? What is it that you see or hear or feel that automatically goes, oh, that is just so great? Do you
For
know what I
me, it's
mean?
definitely being out in nature. And it's just like,
Yeah.
I am all and all is me. Like we are all together as one
Wow.
functioning, right?
Nice.
It's amazing. So
Right.
just like you said earlier, Brett, walking outside, it's like, breathing in the
Mm.
temperature, whatever it is, whether it's cold Midwest, whether it is, hot humidity, it's like, oh, okay, I'm here. I'm living in this moment, I'm alive. So
And
that's what works for
so,
me.
so in that response, is it conditioned on anything? I mean, do you have to be a special way, or is it just kind of there all the time?
I think it's there all the time. I
Yeah.
grew up in the Pacific Northwest where you're at right now, and
Hmm.
that's just being in nature is what fills my cup, and connecting with other people as well, of course.
Yes,
But that
exactly.
just
Right. Because
automatically just fills me up.
yeah, I can feel that in you. It's like this skill about this thing, something about connecting, authentic connection with you, like really goes deep. So that's a really great example of the kind of thing that I ask clients and coaches to do is to find such scenarios, things that they connect to that aren't conditioned. It doesn't have to be this way, or I like red flowers and not the blue flowers. I like the small dogs and not the big dogs. It's not conditioned. And that kind of unconditional connection to the absolute, in this case, your absolute is connection with all, connection with beauty, right? We all have those things in our life. Those are resources for people. And people don't really use them as an ally in their lives when they are feeling disconnected, confused,
Mhm.
unappreciated, injustice. And not that those things don't actually legitimately happen. Injustices do happen to people. Bad things do happen to people. And that's when you need these resources, which are
Mhm.
instantly available to you all the time in order to find some source of resilience and resourcefulness in yourself with which you can manage your problems. So, in
Yes.
my method, one of the things I say is that your problems don't go away, they just get smaller because you get bigger.
Ah, I love that. I really love that, Brett. And you talking about, having that resource, it's exactly what I learned in the biodynamic breathwork and trauma release system. And
Yeah,
because it resets the nervous system, right? When
exactly
when
so.
we're, yep, and the body responds immediately. It just
Yes.
takes time for the mind to catch up, right? Because the mind's still wherever it is.
Yes.
But the more we practice it, the more we bring ourselves into that resource, breathe into that space and know, right? Start trusting in our own abilities. Um, just as you said, the problem gets smaller and I get bigger, right? It's us expanding
Hmm.
past the challenge that we are, we perceive to be a challenge.
Right, because we've made ourselves smaller. We've jumped into the challenge, the constricted space. I have limited resources when, but when you connect to the heart of all being, what problem is going to overwhelm you? You know,
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, this is good stuff. Good stuff. I just want to bring it back to when you talked about connecting with the client. I like to see it as, right, us, with other people, especially in our home life, and how you described that person feeling powerless and how they had that shift, that somatic shift when they took a breath and kind of release that, with kids. I believe it's really important to
mm,
acknowledge our young people and give them space to express what they're feeling, what thoughts are coming up for them, uh, so that way they can know that, you know, the caregiver, or that they have their own resource too. Teaching this to kids to become more resilient, and empowering them is so important. I know that was kind of off topic, but that just really hit home with me when you described that.
Mm. Oh, I'm glad that that lights up in you, and I believe you're quite right because you can tell a small child like 4, 5, 6. You can say, "What's your tummy saying to you?" And they have no trouble telling you what's your heart saying, and they'll just tell you, you know. But if you tell like a 27-year-old, "What's your heart saying to you?" and they go, "Well, what do you mean?" Right? It's like you get a thought. I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense. It's the brain's in the way, and and there's not. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that it's just a completely different level of development. And as adults, a big part of my work with working with people is to help them reconnect their languaging about their sensations, feelings, emotions, because we don't really have that. Particularly men, just don't have language for how are we feeling. What and there can be a lot of nuanced language there, but we just don't practice or connect to it.
And that, separates us from ourselves, from our
Exactly.
authentic selves. Being a little bit more intimate with ourselves, giving ourselves a little bit more ease and grace, holding compassion, because we're so judgmental of what we've done and all the shoulda, woulda, coulda. I say
Yeah,
stop shoulding on yourself.
that's a good one. And the point here, I think the extended point is if you don't know yourself, how if you can't connect to who you are, how do you expect to connect to other people?
Mm.
And so we walk around, and there's an epidemic of loneliness in the culture. And it's because I think we don't know who we are. Because when you know who you are, suddenly people are revealed to you.
It's very powerful. And it's not an ego power. It's more of
Oh no.
feeling comfortable in our own skin, and
Yeah,
understanding. I call it, learning to navigate our own internal landscape.
exactly
Some
that.
days it's going to be bright and sunny. Other days you might find yourself in a deep cavern somewhere, and just it's simply accepting these parts of ourselves, and knowing that, we have a resource, as you said, and we can help shift that, just melting those layers.
Yeah, right. Because so often we're just simply connected to our ideas of who we should be and what we ought to be and what we ought to do. And many times, those ideas are not ours. They are provided by the culture, your family, by friends, by others around you, and you've adopted them and stepped into them as your own skin, and they're not. And that's why we often feel disconnected from our true self, from our authentic purpose, because we're living somebody else's idea of what we ought to be. And when you
Mm,
drop into the truth of who you are in your essence, then what to do authentically emerges fairly automatically and gracefully. Um, and it doesn't take a lot of figuring out because it's like, oh, well, of course, it's so
yeah.
obvious. And there's always in that moment, there's always this sense of coming home. There's a sense of, oh, I know this is so in your
Mm,
bones, in your core of your being. And when you have that moment, when you have those experiences, everything changes. You can never go back.
yeah, that's
And
the
that's my wish for
transformational.
everyone.
Yeah, that's the transformational within ourselves, and shifting that. And it literally changes our brains, our nervous system, everything shifts. And I just find that so fascinating and really empowering for people. to recognize
Exactly
that.
so. Yep,
Yeah.
deeply empowering, and empowering in the true sense of the word, not just, oh, now I've got a lot of money, I can do something, or now I've got a job and I have authority, but empowered from a place of unconditioned, just like my connection to the sun or your connection to beauty or connection to nature. It's unconditioned. Your authority comes from a place that no one can touch,
Mm.
which is an
Ah,
exceptionally powerful way to live your life.
yeah. So I have a question for you, Brett.
Sure.
So talking about living your life more intentionally, what do you do? How are you living intentionally, I should say, right now?
Well, I mean, I'm on a mission. So I kind of have this drive to kind of like help as many people as I can while I can. And to do that, I have practices, some of which I've been talking about, that I do every day. And I work to make sure that I'm inwardly connected to being of service to the world and to the the purpose of helping people become who they truly are. And when I connect to that in myself, I just feel energy flowing through my whole system. And I want to move into the world powerfully using platforms like this and using ones that I build to try to facilitate, you know, um, helping others land in the truth of who they are so that we can have a world that's as magnificent as the people in it. And we, because it's a co-creation, right? It's like
Mhm.
the world manifested. Here we are. We're these magnificent beings, and we haven't quite created a world that kind of encourages us to be the most resilient, healthful, resourceful, grounded people that we could probably be. Because you can look at the culture as a whole, and that's very obvious. So there are ways. So I'm moved in my practice of trying to be present with my own moment. And I think I could say it really more clearly by simply saying my practice is the person that's right in front of me.
Ah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I can really sense that, and I see that with the work that you do as I signed up for your newsletters, and they're very insightful yet easy, practical. That's what I love about
Mm,
it and about you,
exactly.
right? You put
Well,
it
thank
into
you.
perspective of here is this, and these are the ways to, have that deeper connection with mindfulness and the somatics. And it's so needed right now uh, in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who are curious to learn more about you, what is your website information? How do they get in touch with you?
You can find me at themindfulcoach.com. Uh, just like that, themindfulcoach.com. You can also just Google Brett Hill and mindfulness, and you'll find me that way too. I have several things that I'm doing. I have a um, pre-recorded training for coaches called Mindfulness and Presence Fast Track for Coaches that's available. I'm so excited about that course, which I just put out. Um, Designed to help coaches. We talked earlier about being in that state, designed to help coaches, specifically coaches, therapists, anyone who helps other people professionally be in that state. And then the next piece of it is if they want to learn the somatic skills, I have a class called the Mindful Coaching Method, which is an 8-week online live facilitated training that takes people through the what to do now that you've brought
Mm.
this state into your presence, into your sessions.
Ah,
So you can find all of that information at themindfulcoach.com.
oh, that's good stuff. I hope that people do reach out, wanting to learn more. I see this even, you don't have to be a real coach in order to take these courses because this is something
Right.
that, we're building that emotional intelligence within ourselves. It's just better communicating with ourselves and others, as I talked about, with
Exactly.
kids, with other people in our lives, and just being aware, right? It brings that awareness of, oh, that person, how they're behaving, how they're holding their body, you know, what where are they at? They're not here. There's someone else, somewhere else.
I
So it
love
just
that. Yeah,
builds
it's
that
so true. Yeah.
awareness.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it's all about is this awareness. Because when you have that awareness, then you have a choice about, oh, I can see. Do you have time? We have time for like a really quick story, like one
Oh,
minute?
please.
Yeah. I was I was a client of a therapist, and this guy was supposed to be a mindful therapist who was helping people with specific issues. Well, a long list of credentials and honors. And I went to this guy and I sat down and I started talking. And within a couple of minutes, because I'm a pretty easy access emotional kind of guy, and so I'm feeling these tears start to well up in me and this sadness come over me. And he's like talking and looking, not looking directly at me and kind of talking. And he doesn't, in my work, I call it contact. He doesn't make contact with
Mm.
my emotional state. And in that first 10 minutes, he completely lost my trust because he didn't even see me in the chair going through this state. And this guy was supposed to be really good. And I'm like, oh my God, what is up? He didn't even notice. And so this is what an example of you have to notice. And when you notice, then you can make choices. Like instead of saying whatever he was thinking about, he could notice what's happening and go, oh, are, are you feeling something right there? Just simply connect. Or um, to use a different kind of framing, just go, that seems hard. Huh? Just simply going,
Mm.
oh, and then I can go, yes, yes, it's hard. And he can see me, and now we're connected. Right? That one simple little move would have changed the entire session.
Yes.
Now, this might sound simple, but I promise you that if you do these specific techniques that I have in mind for people, there'll be a lot more that I call those jewels on the ground. They're like
Mm.
right at your feet if you just notice them.
Oh, yeah. We have the treasure within ourselves. It's just noticing and finding them and
Yeah,
appreciating them in ourselves. Yes. And it takes practice, people.
it
It takes
does. It is
practice.
something. Go ahead, please.
Yes. And that's just why I love having you here, Brett, because you have those programs there for people. You are very accessible. And so thank you again for accepting the invitation to co-create with me here today.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you and your work and um, you know, who you are is such a, a pleasure to be with and to experience kind of your connection to the bigness and how that moves through you. And I really
Mm.
appreciate you giving voice to that and putting that out in the world.
Ah, thank you for witnessing me. And
My
those of
pleasure.
you who are watching or listening, please leave a comment. Let Brett know what you enjoyed, or if you have any questions, reach out to him through his website. I will put his links also in there so you can connect directly with him. And also for a transformational experience for those who really want to get out and get away, please join me on my Reset and Restore retreats that I offer. So there's going to be one in Bali in November of 2024. So check out my website for that to reset and restore your mind and body and bring more
Mm.
vitality back into your life because that's what we're here for, right? Is to live and to enjoy life. So until next time, my friends, be well.